Hey there and welcome. This video we're going to take a look at expertise, explain what it is and how it works. If you find this video helpful, please like, subscribe, as I'll be making more guides in the future. First off, I want to just go over how much of your car's performance is actually tied up into expertise, and that number is about 80%, which is quite a lot. The remaining 20% can be found in your staff and your buildings, but 80% is basically tied to expertise, meaning that figuring out how expertise works, how to gain it, and how to lose it is kind of important to make sure that you know how to improve your car in that manner. So let's go over quickly what expertise is. The best way that I like to visualize expertise is that I believe that this number basically just represents how good my staff, how good my engineers are at a certain aspect of a certain part. In this case, our engineers for our chassis are 79% out of 100, kind of figured out how to get more top speed on our chassis, if that makes sense to you. So basically, it just represents how good your team is at certain aspects of certain parts. That is the way that I like to look at expertise. Generally, though, it can go from 0 to 100, but generally, you're going to be seeing expertise numbers between 30 to maybe 90% towards the late game. As the way that expertise works is that the lower it is, the easier it is to gain. And as you get closer and closer to 100%, it's going to slow down drastically. But yeah, expertise in its purest form is just a number that represents how good your team is at dealing with certain aspects of certain parts. And for every part, every aspect is individual. So the drag reduction on our chassis is not going to influence our drag reduction on our rear wing at all. They are completely independent from each other, and the two numbers have no correlation really at all. Now, figuring out where your current expertise is at can be kind of difficult. In our case, I'm using the research screen, but things like regulation changes can mess it up a little bit, but you should be able to get a pretty good, idea of where your expertise is by using the research screen. You can also use car parts at the start of the season, the ones that you're given initially, to see where your expertise levels are at the start of the season. For instance, if we can take a look at the suspension here, we haven't actually made a suspension this year, so our expertise levels is pretty in line with what we're seeing here. So at the start of the year, you can use these numbers to get an idea of where you're currently at. If you make any pass with any change to the sliders, the numbers are not going to be accurate. Another thing you've probably realized with expertise is that it's hard to know exactly what your expertise is when it comes to low speed, medium speed, and high speed cornering values, because they are, well, in kilonewtons. And once you understand how this works, it's actually pretty straightforward. So low speed cornering goes from 3 to 5 kilonewtons. That is 0 to 100%, which means that we take 4.67, we subtract 3, leaves us with 1.67, and then we have to split that in 2. In our case, we are going to end up with what would this be? 83.5%, I think. Basically, 167 split on 2 should be 83.5. Unless my math is wrong. I think it's correct. But basically, you take that number, in our case, 1.67 times 100, 167, split it on 2. Then you end up with 83.5, which gives us 83.5 expertise, or rather percent expertise for low speed. For medium, you do the same thing, but it's from 5 to 7. So we take 6.59. We subtract 5, which gives us 159. I'm going to round it up to 160 just to make it a little bit easier for myself mathematically. And that tells us we're at 80% or 79.5% worth of expertise, to be precise. Now, high speed is luckily a lot simpler. It goes from 7 to 8, which means that we just subtract the 7. 70 or 0.7 times 100 gives us 70%. So our high speed expertise, it would be 70%. And it's equal for that for your rear wing. Works the same way. This would be 75%. For your front wing, this would be 69%. It's just these two down a little bit, low speed and medium speed, that can be a little bit difficult to calculate. Now, next up, we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can lose and gain expertise. So there's two primary ways that you gain expertise, and that is by designing. Just pretty straightforward. Every day, a design project runs, you gain expertise, and this is kind of the important part with expertise gain. Expertise is gained daily over the course of a project's lifetime. Basically, every day you have a project running, you gain expertise tied to that project. So if we make a chassis design, we run it for 33 days, we are going to get a certain amount of expertise over those 33 days. Now, if we rush it, we're going to get the exact same daily expertise gain. And if we put 6 engineers on it as well, we're still getting the same expertise gain daily. So even if we can run 2 projects in the time that we run 1, if we do rush with 6 engineers, the expertise gain that we would get from doing such a thing would be exactly or very close to the same as if we just ran that project normally with 1 engineer. So if you're looking to gain expertise through the sign, run the projects normally, do not use rushed, do not put extra engineers on it. You can use intense. Intense is actually a brilliant way of increasing your expertise gains, but it comes with a very severe drawback. And that drawback is that it triples the cost of the projects, and the expertise gain is 1.5 times bigger. So basically, you gain a 0.5 times modifier to your expertise gains. 1 is what you would usually get, so you get 50% more, but it's going to cost you 3 times as much. If you can afford it, it's no problem to run the intense designs. It's actually kind of recommended. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about is how you can get it with research as well. So let's go over that before we look into CFD. Now, if you go into your research screen here, you can gain expertise. And the best part about the research screen is that it tells you exactly how much you are gaining or losing just straight up from the get-go. It tells you how much expertise you're getting, how much you're losing, and it'll still do that even if we mess around with the sliders. So research screen is actually the best way to see how much expertise you're doing from doing something. And again, this is probably the best way of getting expertise. It's definitely the best money to expertise gain ratio, if you will, to be fair. So I would really recommend you do the signs. And again, while we're here, we might as well talk about how you are losing expertise. There's only one way you'll ever lose expertise, and that is through basically regulation changes. You can change your staff, you can have buildings degrading, all that jazz. But the only way you're actually losing your expertise is through regulation changes. And in this case, we're losing 30% of our low speed, we're losing 20% of our medium speed, and we're losing 10% of our high speed. And that is based on our current expertise. So for the underfloor, we would be losing 7.3% of our expertise. We wouldn't be losing 10%. Now for our medium speed, which we calculated earlier, this would be about 70% as well. We'd lose about 14%. And we can actually check these numbers on the underfloor by going into our boardroom. If you don't want to calculate it yourself, you can go into your board, rules, regulations, and we can see here that we are losing about 0.08 kilonewtons on our high speed. Remember, this one is pretty simple to convert. This is 8%. This one we have to split into 2, which gives us 17.5%. So I was a little bit off, probably because we were on the research screen. But it's going to tell you exactly how much you're losing and how much you need to kind of research to make up for it. And there is a very, very good reason why you should research to make up for expertise losses, and that is to research this has already happened. And as I mentioned earlier, the lower our expertise is, the quicker it goes back up. So by researching things that we already lost expertise in, we're actually gaining a lot more than if we did the same thing as a design. And of course, if we do a design that gains expertise is something we are losing expertise in due to regulation change, we're going to be losing some of that gain. So if you are safe in your championship, let's say that you are supposed to get 9th and you are running 7th, as long as the board is happy with what you're doing, go ahead and just spend most of your financials and time on research. It's perfectly fine. It is going to be the most efficient way to improve your car. But if you do it too much, you're probably going to leapfrog the AI a little bit, particularly in the bigger regulation change year. Do keep that in mind. Now, another thing that you're probably curious about is how CFD time works. And CFD time is actually also best spent used on research. But generally, what you're going to be seeing with CFD time is that if you make one design, it's not really going to, or rather, we can basically take a look here first at research. We're getting a pretty significant boost. I'm just going to go back so we can take a look at that again. We're getting 1 to 2% across the board. Then if we put CFD time in on top of that, we're going to get some pretty significant boosts to our gains here. We're getting up to 4 to 5% across the board. And that is kind of why CFD time is quite important. It's a very strong modifier to your expertise gain, and it's very, very strong, particularly when it's applied to one part for the most part. Generally though, again here, it's just a boost to expertise gain, and it works very similarly to this on the design scale too. The only difference is that if you use it on a design, let's say that we want to make a new underfloor, we invest all of our CFD time, we're not seeing those massive gains that we saw when we did, say, the rear wing. And the reason for this is actually incredibly simple. The expertise gain from CFD and wind tunnel time, the way that it works is that it adds another day of expertise gain, if that makes sense. So let me just walk 2 steps back here. If we want to do this project, it's going to take us 33 days, meaning that we have 33 days where we're getting daily expertise from this project. Now, if we add CFD time to it, each unit of CFD equals another day gained. So by adding, in this case, a total of 45 units for CFD and a total of 60 units for wind tunnel, 105, what we're actually doing to this project is that we're adding another 105 days worth of expertise gain. Basically, we are doing a boost here that is the same as doing this project 3 times, so to speak. And we're not really going to see this benefit, the benefit of the expertise gain, until this first design is done. So that is when you use full CFD time on a project, go ahead and make another one afterwards, and you're going to see a huge gain. And that is also why I mentioned earlier in the video that although CFD buildings can give you a little bit of a boost for your CFD time, or rather for your part, the expertise boost afterwards is going to be big enough to offset that gain most of the time. And also CFD and wind tunnel buildings are very expensive, don't upgrade them, but that is basically it. Now, I probably haven't been, this has probably been a little bit confusing, the way that I've kind of tried to explain this, so feel free to ask any questions and I would be happy to kind of make it a little bit clearer for the parts that haven't been unclear. But expertise can be best be looked at as a hidden number, represents how good your team is at handling certain aspects of certain parts. It is improved with research and designs, and it's only lost with regulation change, and that's really about it. I also did put up a kind of graph in the middle of the video there, which was kind of showcasing you just how rushed, and also rush plus extra engineers, doesn't really have any effect on your expertise gain. You're going to get the exact same expertise gain if you run 2 normal projects as if you ran 3 rushed or 4 rushed plus, 6 engineers. So keep that in mind. There is no point in putting extra engineers on most projects because they're not actually going to give you any extra expertise. They're just going to drain your money. If anything, using intense design is going to be probably your best bet if you have money to spare that you want to invest into your designs. But yeah, that was it for this one. Sorry if I was unclear at parts. I hope I've made things a little bit clearer, hopefully on how expertise works. Let me know if there's anything I missed, and I'll try and add it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.